So, ladies and gentlemen, I noted that during the break, that while you supped in the other room, I will be seeking intellectual sustenance and reassurance by debugging this model. And what we found was a bug indeed. But the bug lay not in my hands, but in the distant shores of Lake Lagada in St. Petersburg. So let me explain to you the problem. Let me explain to you, if I may, how I located the problem. And let me explain to you the implications. Okay? The manifestation of the problem. Now, Winchell is, even as we speak, I believe, he's navigating to actually watch the final minutes of the previous video to find the forensic evidence that led up to the said incident. So the issue here, ladies and gentlemen, was in fact a fairly simple one, but it gave seemingly contradictory indications that were perplexing. So the issue is this. We had created this new state chart. And in our efforts, we were followed, if I may, if it's not putting him out, I'll just mention that Dave encountered essentially the same error, which is simultaneously reassuring but disconcerting because of the ultimate source of that error. So what happened is we added this state chart. And because of my personal failings, I neglected to use autocomplete. I typed the name in its entirety. Actually, I take that back. AnyLogic failed to do an autocomplete. I don't know if you remember, I was trying to do an autocomplete and it would not engage in this behavior. It would not use autocomplete. So I ended up typing the name in its fulsomeness. And in the process of typing it, I mistyped it. Instead of saying hazard rate ratio for smoking, I said hazard rate ratio for smoking status. Do you remember that? You probably didn't notice the mistake, but I did that. I was trying to do autocomplete and it would not autocomplete. And I actually remarked upon the incident at the time. And in that lay the proximal cause of the error, of the incident, but not, ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate cause. If I can hark back to the Aristotelian sort of distinctions of causality. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mistyped this name. And under normal circumstance, what would have happened is that I would have built this model or tried to run it, and it would have complained. And it would have alerted me to the problem, and it would have brought me to the problem by clicking on it, and I could have fixed it. And you'll notice that with AnyLogic, that even if you try to run this model, which has a problem, if I go try to run it, it will indicate wind chill. Wind chill. Watch. See this?
Yeah,
okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. Ready? Here we put it, it basically reports an error. Okay? It will warn me about this error. But for some reason, AnyLogic got into a mode where it was not warning me about this error. It did not tell me that there was a problem. But critically, it could not make use of this new feature. It could not, in fact, figure out what I meant. And so it did not, in fact, use this new logic in there. So I had made a change to complete the situation, and it ignored that. It used the older version of the model, which it still had extant. And the same thing happened to Dave, as I understand it. He was saddled with the older version of the model. So there was a glaring error in here, but somehow it did not notify me of that, it seems. And Winchell's checking the forensic evidence to verify this fact, and perhaps for shipment to St. Petersburg. So, ladies and gentlemen, what happened is this did not seem to make sense because it was doing something crazy. So in order to investigate this, the fact that people were not dying, I went in and I investigated whether people were dying at all. To do that, I did something like this. I put a trace ln so and so has died here, and that meant that every time this transition went off, this would print out, and no one was dying. I might add that Dave's model exhibited the same pathology. No one was dying. This was distressing. But really, it was not a matter that no one was dying. It was a matter, it wasn't running this change. It wasn't running this model. It was rejecting it, but not telling me if it's rejection. So then I went and I thought, okay, somehow people are not dying. Are they even getting into this state? So I went and I put in a report in this state saying, okay, are they in fact reaching this point? And that was not being reached. They were not in fact coming into the state. So then I started to think, okay, this is really whacked out. Well, something's really wrong here. So then I went to print out something here. I printed out something when they entered the state, just to make sure they were entering the state, or to make sure they were entering the state chart, and they weren't printing out. And I thought, okay, this is absolutely bizarre. It's like this state chart doesn't exist at all. And then the horrible truth dawned on me. And basically, I discovered that there was a misspelling here. And I fixed the misspelling. Normally with a misspelling, it should have warned me. It should have stopped me, ladies and gentlemen. In general, you want it to stop you and tell you it doesn't know how to proceed. That it doesn't know, and it's asking to proceed with launch. It wasn't doing that. And therein lied the problem. Therein lay the bug. And so I went and I fixed the problem. And here the build's complete successfully now. And having completed successfully, it runs just fine. But what I actually did to get it to work, I closed AnyLogic and reopened it. Excuse me, I closed the model and I reopened it. And it was a happy camper. And it reported this error to me. And Dave, too, suffered from the same issue. Dave diagnosed it, as I understand it. He saw the fox's tail in another way. He ran the model, and he noticed that when he ran it, this state chart did not appear at all, as I understand it from Winchell, so we're counting. And as a result, he realized, okay, wait, somehow it's not processing this model, or it's not processing all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an AnyLogic bug, not reporting the error. I think I've encountered it once before. Winchell, have you ever encountered it? Or Annie, have you ever encountered it? Have you ever encountered it?
What? Sorry.
Have you ever encountered the error before?
Yes. Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay. Where it doesn't report the error.
Yeah. So basically, I think it's really like the code generation there was some issue with automatic code generating, and then it kind of cascading into compilation.
Yeah. Okay. So I find this disconcerting. I think I've encountered it myself maybe once before, maybe twice. I think we need to report it, and what it comes down to is if you see something really wild, close the model and reopen it, and you maybe actually see something that you didn't see otherwise. The other thing that this brings home is look for error messages down at the bottom here. Sometimes error messages are not so obvious immediately. If I put an error here and if I misspell something and I build, keep an eye out for error messages down here, because occasionally I've seen that the problems window doesn't come up. it doesn't show. Windshield, I think you probably have encountered that. The problems when it doesn't show up. Keep an eye out for an error message. If it says an error, try going to it by clicking on it. And then it can bring you to that location. So keep an eye out for errors. If there's an error, don't think that by running the model, it's going to somehow magically deal with it. It's going to run a previous version of the model. So I've seen students in a most unwise fashion just ignore this error. I get a cause an error. They try to run the model, and it says proceed with launch, and they say, oh yeah, launch it. That's actually not launching the model as it is. It's launching a previous version of the model that it knew how to deal with. So just be aware that if you say proceed anyway, you're not testing the current version of the model. It doesn't know how to make sense of the current version of the model. It's testing a previous version of the model. Anyway, we'll work on that. Windshield is studying the evidence, verifying this. We will report it. Be aware you may close any logic on a model and reopen it. But the model is working after all. Once those things, I mean, the logical design was correct. It was just this name. Now people are correctly, the mortality rates are reasonable. They're living to fairly reasonable ages here, and we see a distribution that makes a lot more sense. So the problem was somehow that mortality was being ignored because of this hidden error that it didn't tell us about, which it didn't alert us, to which it didn't alert us. Okay? A lesson painful in significance, but hopefully one that may aid you in your future endeavors. Okay, I'm going to save this.